Thank you everyone for coming tonight. This is our fifth and final lecture of 2025. As always, I want to give thanks to AIA Nebraska, who serves as our partner in the Design Lecture Series, as well as to all of our sponsors this year for their support, which has allowed us to bring in some really great speakers. All right, let me introduce tonight's speaker. Anna Ives is the managing partner of Pattern Ives and a lecturer at Washington University in St. Louis. She has a diverse portfolio of award-winning work focusing on higher education, healthcare, and planning. Anna approaches teaching and project work with criticality, rigor, patience, and persistence, finding the complement of the two pursuits essential. With degrees from Bryn Mawr College and Columbia University, Anna's education and background brings considerable depth to the practice of architecture. Prior to her graduate education, she studied economics with a focus on international finance. Please welcome Anna.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Ives, and I'm the managing partner of Pattern Ives. And thank you, Ross, for having me here today, and also to the AIA Nebraska and all of your sponsors. It's really an honor to be in Nebraska. This is my first time here, and I wish I had a little bit more time, but we've been doing a lot of road trips from St. Louis, so I'm sure we'll be back. This presentation is sort of a culmination of a year-long celebration of our 10-year anniversary, and I'm grateful to be here to share some of our work with you. We begin with discovering place beyond the lens of daily habituation, surfacing the details, weaving a story that supports meaningful connection between occupant and space. Pattern Ives has a keen interest in time, a commitment that is equally manifest in work that is decidedly modern and in the labor of love that is historic preservation. Today I want to talk a bit about the unique relationship between our historic restoration studio and the greater framework of our practice. In our work, which focuses on the arts, education, and community, we take the long view, looking both into the future and well into the past. Our offices in St. Louis and Philadelphia reflect the same ideal, one tied to our colonial origins, the other an icon of Western expansion and progress. The dialogue between these places and the architecture they've produced informs all of our work and challenges us to look beyond the fashionable to the truly timeless. Our unique ability to combine historic preservation and modernism is increasingly relevant and important as our stock of modern buildings continues to age. To us, preservation is not a niche, just as design is not a luxury. Both are imperative and continuously inform one another, implicitly demanding that we see longevity and craft as a critical part of sustainability. Pattern Ives is a women-owned small business with an incredible team of architects and designers led by myself and my two partners, Tony Patterson and Eric Hoffman. Our process is likened to old friends sitting across the table, curious and with a genuine, personalized approach, delivering spaces that create belonging, security, and wonder. At this important milestone, we're reflecting on and celebrating our foundational tenet of care and curiosity in our work, in our practice, and in our approach. We're reminded of the impact and responsibility we each have with this testimonial. Our quiet design philosophy has resulted in an award-winning body of work that spans across a wide variety of project types and locations. But we are united by being predominantly civic in nature and by the immediate and enduring impact they have on the communities they serve. We were humbled to be recognized with the invitation to participate in an international exhibition, A South 40, which features 40 of the top design practices south of Highway 40, with an emphasis on place-based design. The exhibit recognizes work that's attentive to overlooked or often undervalued typologies, constituencies, and locales, and an approach that is attentive to the fundamental notions of climate, material, labor, and purpose. This exhibition coincided with the 2021 Venice Biennale and a symposium entitled Practice of Place, Place of Practice at the University of Arkansas. It's currently on view at the National Building Museum in Washington, D.C. The Friends and Friends studio of Pattern Ives was the architecture practice of my parents, who founded the office in 1988. They worked together with a fluctuating team of 2 to 10 in a suburb of Philadelphia. I literally grew up in their practice as it was in our home, and my familiarity with their work was enough to bring their studio into 2 projects I was working on with another St. Louis architecture office prior to Pattern Ives. One of these projects was the St. Louis Public Library. The St. Louis Public Library, completed in 1912, was designed by the New York firm of Cass Gilbert, architect of the United States Supreme Court, and several other state capitals. To celebrate the 100th anniversary of the building, the library completed a major modernization and restoration program designed by Canon Design with Friends and Friends as consulting restoration architect. Friends and Friends had previously consulted on the restoration of Cass Gilbert structures, and the opportunity to engage with the St. Louis Library project presented itself when I was working on the marketing materials for the pursuit. There's a fascinating story here. The very site was once the location of the St. Louis Exposition Hall, constructed just 20 years prior. Andrew Carnegie, an industrialist and philanthropist who supported construction of libraries across our nation, provided $1 million in funds to the city of St. Louis to fund construction of the central and branch libraries, insisting only that the community furnish the land and commit to its support through taxes. He gave money for what he considered dignified but practical buildings. In anticipation of the building's 100-year anniversary, the library sought to restore and renovate the building, to transform public access, modernize the library's offerings, and enhance the building's stature as a cultural treasure. The initial master plan had indicated a new addition on the north side of the building, but we won the project with the proposition that the book storage area, with original shelving and glass floors, could be hollowed out to allow for a reimagined entry sequence within the footprint of the library. The interior finishes, including stone flooring and wall facings, architectural casework, paneling, doors, and other stained woodwork, were tired and required full restoration. Ornamental plaster ceilings were restored and repainted. Lighting and systems were thoughtfully integrated such that the architecture is unbound by the requirements of systems and upgrades that had been completed in previous renovations. With this renovation, the library was fully committed to improving the accessibility of the building from the streetscape. A new public entry is fully deferential to the design of the original building, with a carefully proportioned canopy to shelter and welcome visitors to the building's north wing. Inside the north wing, replacing the previously inaccessible stacks, is a fully renovated multi-story atrium with access to new public amenities that is flooded with northern light. In many ways, this project is responsible for the way that we consider our historic restoration expertise within the Pattern Ives studio. Pattern Ives began in 2014 in a 500 square foot room with one long set of IKEA tables, which we sat for 8 years until we relocated our studio to its present location. We had the opportunity to partner strategically with Friends and Friends over the first few years of our operation, and when my parents began to consider retirement, it was an easy decision to bring their team into ours. Now we have a team of 10 across 2 offices, and we collaborate on nearly every project. Let's begin with a project as old as the idea of our nation, and one of the most recognizable structures in our portfolio. Dating to 1744, the Christ Church has been cited as our finest early American church and one of the finest Georgian structures in America. Its steeple from 1754 was financed by Benjamin Franklin Lottery. It's the work of Robert Smith, one of America's earliest architects. For 56 years, the steeple made Christ Church the tallest structure in North America. To the casual visitor, Christ Church, Philadelphia appears as a revered colonial landmark, a remarkable religious edifice closely associated with Independence Hall and the founding of the nation. The reality of the fragility of a building that stretched the structural limits of brick and timber underlies the perceived timeless character of the stolid 265-year-old brick walls. From its beginning, Christ Church has been riddled with structural problems and irregular maintenance that has required periodic major interventions. Due to the prominence of the building architecturally, some of Philadelphia's most capable architects and engineers were engaged to address both the building conservation issues confronting the church and the changing needs of the Episcopal Church liturgy. In a project like this, our work should be largely invisible. Scaffolding and sheeting were installed to provide workers access. And with several phases of restoration complete, our team is at work on a renewed master plan 20 years later to meet the ever-evolving needs of this historic structure, which remains a vibrant center for worship, art, and historical tourism. We started work on Kolvernas Synagogue in 2017, just 3 years after the founding of our practice, and recently completed Phase 4, an expansion of the Early Childhood Center, and initiated planning for Phase 5, an additional expansion for the center. This project exemplifies some of our primary aspirations for our practice: building long-term relationships with clients and communities through genuine care, building for longevity with clients who prioritize the long life of a structure. We often return to this quote from Juhani Pallasmaa as a reminder of the significance of the entire process. Some projects arrive with 1,000 stories, and this project could take an entire hour alone. It's been very meaningful to learn more about Judaism through this work, and everyone at Kolvernas has been extremely welcoming and have made us a part of their community. Their board has over 100 members, so meetings and presentations are always lively events. A photo of the groundbreaking ceremony is on the right. Kolvernas is a diverse, inclusive, forward-looking Jewish faith community uniting two long-standing St. Louis congregations. Similar consolidations between religious institutions often fail, adding weight and responsibility that we shared with Kolvernas. The building project is part of a much larger effort to bring two groups of people together as a unified synagogue. The project started shortly after Kolvernas acquired a new property, the site of a former Baptist church. The architectural challenge became how to intervene in a sensitive way to the existing context and to respect the history of the site while providing a new identity that defined Kolvernas. The site is located at an intersection between a residential district and the growing business district of Clayton, just west of Washington University and Forest Park. It offered great potential as an urban green space, opening to views south to the city. Before we were involved, a previous scheme planned for the primary sanctuary space to be within the renovated Baptist nave. Many members of the congregation reacted against this idea. From the outset, it became clear that the key to the project was going to be a new building addition for an entirely new sanctuary space. Precise siting of the addition creates a formalized open courtyard anchoring the entire site. The courtyard is the heart of the project, a value-added space for outdoor gathering, play, and worship. A guiding principle of our office has been to always emphasize the site and develop clear site strategies, regardless of project type or size. This is certainly true for Kolvernas, with an extremely tight site that needed to accommodate many functions. We collaborated with 10 by 10 Studio in Minneapolis to create a fully integrated site and landscape design for a cohesive set of spaces, inside and out. The addition creates both an entry space to the west and a formal courtyard to the center. Entry is organized for the entire synagogue on a fully accessible path through an informal garden that also manages stormwater for the site. Kolvernas' very successful early childhood center added several site challenges. A new vehicular drop-off was created with the newly accessible parking, and partially lowered outdoor play spaces added protection, security, and intuitive wayfinding. Heritage items, including the first installation of three-dimensional stained glass, were carefully incorporated into the support spaces of the existing building, while the new sanctuary was free of constraints other than to impart a sense of permanence, natural beauty, and careful crafting of materials and light. The materials of the school building presented the most challenge, as they were not robust, thin slabs, 4-inch concrete block walls, but by making this building into a service building to house offices and classrooms, which it had been originally designed to do, we were able to leave as many walls as possible untouched. The addition is carefully linked to the existing building, providing a new identity for the synagogue as a whole. 2 carves are made into the solid stone massing, one to mark entry for the synagogue at the scale of the neighborhood, and the south opening as an urban response to activate the street facade. The south carve, which is this one, I can't see my mouse. The south carve is also functional, creating non-parallel walls inside the sanctuary for better acoustics while creating a small aperture for western light. The addition contains entry lobby and new sanctuary space with a small support zone. The existing school building was originally a double-loaded corridor. The north side was maintained for support spaces and religious education, and the south side was completely removed, allowing a new small chapel space and flexible lobby space to face the center courtyard. The former Baptist church nave is transformed into a social hall with future kosher kitchens. And the entire lower level on the left is dedicated to the Early Childhood Center, connected to outdoor play areas. The addition is primarily constructed as a masonry mass for acoustic isolation. On the right, a view through the lobby space reveals precise alignment with the Baptist church structural bays. On the left, an area of stud framing within the overall masonry structure to support the canted stone. It's also worth noting that our office is just 3 blocks south of Colrena, which is a short walk for site visits. The sanctuary is an unexpected double-height space, designed as an acoustic environment toned for unamplified speech and vocal music. The space is shaped with subtly angled walls and a strongly sculpted ceiling, and the acoustics help foster clear communication, fellowship, and contemplation. Diffuse natural light enters through a continuous north-facing clerestory. A flat floor maximizes flexibility, while a movable bema, which is a podium, allows for easy reconfiguration. The space is inwardly focused as a sacred space that promotes spirituality and a sense of togetherness. On the left, the east-facing arc wall and eternal light. The arc wall cabinetry houses the Torah scrolls, and behind the doors with a delicate stainless steel overlay. And prayer books and other worship items are to the left. For most events held during daylight hours, the space can function with natural light alone. The material strategy for the project started as a response to context. The existing Baptist church featured limestone trim, and limestone is also present on several neighboring buildings. The limestone strengthens the addition as an extension of the existing building, and the material helps ground the structure to its place. Our exploration of natural stone started a few years prior to Colrena with our first project as Pattern Ives. This is the Portal House, a private residence located just outside of Louisville. The structure was going to be clad entirely with limestone, a very common building material for that region. And having only limited prior experience with limestone, we started a lengthy process learning about limestone for the Portal House. Material research and visits to multiple quarries, collaboration with local fabricators and stonemasons on detailing strategies, cladding panel dimensions, and mortar joint and weathering were all a part of that process. A full-scale mock-up was created for the project to test all aspects of the stone, and part of that cladding system included a stone screen for solar shading. Once it became clear that limestone was going to be part of the Colrena Synagogue project, we were able to translate much of what was learned on Portal House, and this has been a great reminder and teaching tool in our office that all project work, research, process, it all matters. While some projects remain unbuilt, as is the case for Portal House, the work is incredibly valuable. Critical experience is gained through care and curiosity in the process. The limestone used at Colrena is from the Flint Hills in Kansas, quarried at 380 miles from the site. The warmth, variation, and natural occlusions reveal its geologic formation and regional history. Lighter toned 2x6 panels are set in contrast to darker toned 6-inch by 6-foot panels. St. Louis has a very strong masonry tradition, and the masons on this project did an amazing job. An excerpt from the stone drawings shows every single panel dimensioned, control joints located, and carefully concealed. Natural stone helps connect the synagogue to its place and provides a critical civic presence and permanence for the new Colrena. In the same way that the library imagined our future practice, this project is in some ways the result of our entire history as Pattern Ives. As a lasting collaboration with everyone at Colrena and a project that contributes to the community where we practice, we all agree we are better people as a result of this work. Founded 300 years ago as part of the original acreage purchased by William Penn from the Native Americans, Newtown streets are lined with Revolutionary War homes and maintains a strong tie to its historic vernacular. Newtown was once the county seat, and the Court Inn was once a popular gathering place in proximity to the busy courthouse. The Court Inn now houses the Newtown Historic Association, established in the 1960s to preserve the town's historic heritage. The Historic Association identified the rear lot of their properties as the location for an expansion that would allow for climate-controlled, condensed stack archival storage and a large multi-purpose space for both internal and community events. The Historic Association maintains 3 adjacent buildings that contain historic interpretive displays and archives relevant to the town's rich history. One of the 3 properties was once home to Edward Hicks, a leading American folk artist who lived in Newtown for most of his life. The Court Inn's 3 buildings have remained a landmark of colonial America and a research resource of this time period. Following a rigorous study of the site and existing buildings, a strategy was developed to build across the back edge of the lots to create a private courtyard, capitalizing on the existing mature tree, restored root cellar, and human scale of the historic structures. The form of the expansion derives from study of local carriage house typology, deferential in relation to the street facade of the existing Court Inn, and fully transparent to the new courtyard. The main floor provides a large space for gathering and service bar. The lower floor houses the archive. In section, moving the archive below grade supports the climatic conditioning and structural requirements of the archival materials, while allowing the new structure to maintain a deferential scale to the existing historic buildings and intimate courtyard. The materiality and form are drawn from local precedents of carriage houses. In this case, once again, the building itself is nearly asked to disappear. Utilizing regional materials and surgically precise placement, something wholly new and modern is inserted into the most sensitive of historic contexts, deferring completely while becoming seamlessly knit with the experience of the site. Agriculture has long been a major economic force of Northwest Arkansas. Early pioneers grew crops to feed their families and livestock. With the arrival of the railroads in the late 1800s, farmers grew additional produce and shipped it to market. By the 1930s, researchers had introduced new farming practices to improve crop yields. Commercial canning plants opened, more and more laborers were needed to pick and process the 24,000 acres of crops in Washington, Benton, and Madison counties. Financial hardship during the Great Depression led people across the nation to pack up their belongings in secondhand cars and follow the crops, traveling from town to town picking whatever crop was in season. In Northwest Arkansas, strawberries were harvested first, followed by green beans, tomatoes, peaches, other berries, cherries, grapes, and finally apples. Entire families labored long hours in the fields. Farmers couldn't provide much in the way of good housing and medical care. Migrant laborers camped by their cars or lived on the farmer's property in poultry houses or sheds. To address this shortage of housing, cabins were constructed in Springdale in the 1940s. The legacy of the agricultural structure, at one time human scale and now machine scale, is regionally definitive and familiar. Located near downtown Springdale, the Market Center of the Ozarks will become a model food hub, entrepreneurship, and education building that supports local, sustainable, and regenerative agriculture. The Market Center is a project of the Walton Family Foundation, is intended as a prototypical and a means to fully revolutionize the way food is brought to market. The material strategy on food systems includes a resilient masonry base that transitions from wall, surface, to paver. Above, a light ephemeral rain screen envelops rolling, gabled roofs reminiscent of the built vernacular, greenhouses, and industrial sheds. The roof volumes permit extensive systems routing while welcoming natural daylight to enter a deep floor plate through dormers and clear stories, and accentuating a massed timber structure. Bands of glazing connect common spaces from interior to exterior. Successfully balancing tight performance constraints with aspirational and sustainable design objectives, this humble material palette evokes a welcome familiarity to a diverse array of visitors and influence, including the largest Marshallese population in the country. From agriculture to nutrition, the proposed facility aspires to develop a comprehensive prototype that integrates food hub, food entrepreneurship, and educational programs. They support local, sustainable, regenerative agriculture and food education. A carefully considered site strategy integrates landscape, ecology, and architecture to engage an existing trail system and infrastructure to reinforce the community's primary, commercial, and cultural corridor. The facility is purposefully sited in the northwestmost corner of the site, maximizing the productive landscape and available urban edge. We believe resilience is the act of cultivating rather than consuming the site. The facility's front porch, cladding, and haint blue backdrop will evolve over time. In this image, you can see the cross grain that stitches the volumes together. And its mission will have an incredible reach. Love Bank Park is a very special project for our office, done pro bono as a way of giving back to our city and to our community. The land sits within the Cherokee Street neighborhood, a vibrant and diverse place, and the park itself originated with a vision for a shared public space that did not yet exist for the neighborhood's youth. Love Bank was an informal park established by the neighborhood in 2015 on a site where residential brick structures once stood. The houses had been demolished and the lot paved over. A group of neighbors adopted the lot as a place for local kids to play, installing a basketball hoop and providing modest amenities. The Community Improvement District purchased the lot and meaningfully engaged the local community to imagine what this place could be. We started work on the project in 2022 with an all-office design charrette. We turned over all manner of ideas. Is it in the ground? Is it in the air? What serves the site best? And early site studies tested the potential of the site and the relationships between the primary elements of shade structure, open plaza, and basketball court. The site is organized with public open space toward the primary street edge, with basketball at the back, a shade structure linking the two programmatic uses. The shade canopy, a critical element for our hot St. Louis summers, serves every park user as shade and shelter, pedestrian scale seating, and an area to gather. Lighting is supported by the canopy, both linear LED fixtures for a colorful glow in the evening, and that for daily use, and stage lighting for events. We also managed to incorporate security and all wireless devices up in the canopy, imagining that this canopy could, in the future, capture all manner of future endeavors. The scale of the new intervention was carefully considered within the surrounding residential scaled structures. In designing the canopy, we considered materials and systems that are readily available and modifiable. The final form was inspired by both the required fences surrounding the basketball court and the structural design of road signs that span highways. Our goal was to have as few structural posts interrupting the flow through the space below, and the canopy is structured by a series of galvanized steel trusses clad in chain link as a fabric skin. Local steel fabricators in Illinois were great partners. Multiple tests with the flitch plate connections, as well as assisting with construction logistics and sequencing, all became a personal project of theirs. This entire truss was fabricated in Illinois, shipped out of state for a zinc bath, and returned to Illinois for final finishing. The multi-layered effect of the chain link skin creates a delicate overhead condition, serving as a respite from the St. Louis summer heat. The grand reopening of the park was held last April, perfect conditions to celebrate this vital community space. Chess, lunches, coffee, music, theater, rest, basketball, dancing, all share this community site. The new space has been extremely well received and well used. The park has been described as embodying the spirit and creativity of Cherokee Street. Love Bank creates a space where youth can be active, imaginative, and feel a sense of pride in their neighborhood, and we are grateful to be part of the project. A few projects on the books. On the left, the University of Missouri St. Louis Creative Arts Building, newly christened Creative Arts Building, just received substantial completion. We celebrated the grand opening last week and did our professional photography today. So you'll see that one coming soon. In the middle, our office has held a longstanding ongoing architectural consulting agreement with the Brandywine Conservancy, which maintains the properties of the Andrew Wyeth family. So we're currently assisting them with elevating the structure on the bottom in this image 5 feet out of the FEMA floodplain. And on the right, University of Missouri St. Louis Stadler Hall, which is going to be the home of their new School of Engineering. That's starting construction this fall as well. What's hopefully apparent is that we strive first and foremost to conceive of projects within the context of what already exists. What could be considered two market practices is actually one, and that we're given a broader, more expansive view of time by working together on nearly every effort we approach. A new structure may be constructed of materials as old as the former seafloor that covered our region, or a historic structure that predates our country may be carefully updated with the most advanced technologies, renewing its life and preserving it for centuries to come. Both are imparted with a longevity that speaks to the optimism of building and the importance of our attitude as architects, to operate within an economy of merit. Each and every project has the potential to build a lasting and mutual dialogue with the community that it serves. Thank you.
So you kind of showed the evolution of, a little bit. Has the approach to a project changed in your firm throughout, the 10 years? Has it changed in any way through process or any other way?
That's a great question. I think at a fundamental level, the process has not changed. We've just become a little more sophisticated and informed about how we do it. And maybe confident in the ideas that we have. When you first start a practice and you win your first project, even though we'd been practicing, for years each before we joined, it was scary to have, somebody trust you with designing a whole building when there used to be this whole technical team and, somebody else with a stamp to put on the drawings. So I think, we've just learned a lot in the last 11 years, and I think we've also learned how to work with our team and how to train our team and inform our team and include our team in everything that we do, so that we can really start looking at all the people that are sitting around the table. All 10 of us are really operating in the same direction right now. We have diversified a little bit in terms of our offerings. So we're still mainly architecture, but we hired our first construction manager. So that's been really helpful. His background is in commercial real estate, and especially on the client side, kind of getting projects through to the finish line, a lot of coordination with contractors. So that's something that's just kind of evolved our service offerings. And we've also become a lot more serious about what we need in terms of running the office. So we have a great office manager who handles a lot of things that we might not have been doing right before. So I would say at its fundamental level, we've always wanted to work on the projects. We'll never get big. The three of us always want to have our hands in the actual drawings. But figuring out how to do that, but also sustain a practice, is something that we're still continuing to figure out. I'm sure as anyone with a small office is also struggling with. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First off, this is a great presentation. I enjoyed listening to it. My question is, how do you or both offices collaborate, and what does that look like for projects?
Yeah, so we've done a really good job of bringing the historic restoration expertise to St. Louis. There just aren't as many people doing it there, so it's been really easy for us to to bring that along and start talking about it and kind of showing the value of it. In the other side of that is because the buildings are, I mean, they're just not as old as on the East Coast. The needs for maybe restoration haven't been as well, clients are not as well versed. So we're also learning how to educate people on the value of keeping buildings. I mean, I think no matter what we're doing, we're trying to keep the existing building stock as long as it makes sense to keep it. And there were probably, you know, if you look on our website, we do have a primarily renovation and addition portfolio, you know, with a few exceptions to that, fully ground up. So I think we do a lot of higher education work, so that's a place that it's really easy to cross over. You know, Washington University is a great client of ours, so we'll get looped into things associated with their historic buildings. We're assisting Sasaki with their master plan right now. And that's a good example of where that restoration expertise is critical. Going out east, we haven't done that as much because that office is so busy. We will need to hire. so I think we're still trying to figure that out, but it's really fun to work together and kind of come at architecture. A lot of the things we're saying are the same, but we're kind of used to doing it in really different ways. And so, you know, if we're considering, you know, a stone at the base of a building, I'll just pick a basic option, we will call, you know, my dad and Carol out there and say, hey, you know, what do you think this should be? What kind of detail should this be at the base? Because they really do have this longer spectrum of time, something that's lasted for 200 or 300 years. You can look at that as a precedent and kind of evolve it. And then likewise, they are learning from us about sort of some of the newer systems and different materials that might start to get incorporated into those older structures. Thanks.
What kind of space do you live in?
What do I live in? My home is from the 1930s. It's a brick home that was built there's a local engineering firm that laid out Forest Park, and I live in a suburb that's just west of Forest Park that was also planned by this engineering firm. It felt actually not dissimilar from some of the neighborhoods that I drove through on the way here, if that helps. Historic house. This is the newest house I've ever lived in. Yeah.
What's the most important thing for us as a leader?
I think the most important thing is to be able to say, I don't know. You know, people are always looking to you to say, you know, I know, here's how we're gonna do it. And most of the time I feel like I do now, but I think the most important thing you can do is show that you haven't always known the answer and that you still don't know a lot of things now. I mean, it's kind of like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So I think that would be the thing I've learned and would put at the top of that list.
And I have a question. So, can you describe your partnership with your partners? So, there's three of you. Do each of you bring like a different skill set to the practice, the project, and do you all work on the same projects, or do you each kind of take lead on projects? How does that work?
I'll start with the last question first. So there's three of us. We all worked other places. My partners have amazing portfolios. And when we came together, we did it because we recognized that in the firms that we were currently in, we were ending up in roles where we were getting further and further from the actual work. So we knew that when we started this, we wanted to do the work. So when we set it up, and there were just three of us, and sometimes plus one or two, we agreed early on that there would be an A partner who is day-to-day, knows everything, primary client face, and there would always be a B partner. So the B partner is somebody who is going to enough meetings, has design conversations, familiar with the people, so that if A was not available, B could step in and it wouldn't feel like the project had been left behind. So that's how we started it out when there were just three of us. Now that we have an expanded team, we've started slipping other team members into the B role. You know, we have a sophisticated staff that, you know, they can take on that responsibility and be more client-facing. So that's how we've arranged it. We all still do draw. I would say that I probably draw the least of everybody, to answer your first question. So I do all of the financial side of the business, so that, you know, I just have, my overhead hours are more. But we're still a small business, so it's not, you know, it's not like we don't need a full-time controller or anything like that. And we have a great office manager who helps us with all of the invoicing and all of that kind of stuff. But primarily, we sort of fell into these roles. It wasn't something that we had decided when we started, but I just have a background in the economic side of it, and it was just kind of a natural fit for me to do that, and I'm the managing partner, so that's really the role that I need to take on. And I would say, you know, Tony really manages our social media presence, so our beautiful website, our Instagram page, that's all Tony. And Eric also works on the social media, primarily LinkedIn, and he manages all of our office IT needs. So that's a big and fluctuating task as well. And I'm sure there's lots of other little things in between that we just sort of kick around between us, but that's kind of the division of labor.
What do you see as challenges moving forward for your firm?
I mean, I think the constant challenge is growth. So, you know, doing larger and more projects requires more team members, which requires more management time, which means we're not doing what we said we were going to set out to do, which is work on the projects. So I think that's kind of the cycle that we find ourselves in. But I mean, we keep figuring it out. It is a cycle. And I think, you know, we'll probably stay where we are for right now and just sort of see, you know, economically even, you know, what's going to happen, you know, in these coming years. But I think that's the challenge. But I know we're not unique in that. I know there's these thresholds which we've accidentally stumbled over, and then I come to learn that it's a documented thing.
Looking back on your early years, what would you say was the sauce or the secret to your success in terms of getting commissions as a young firm?
I would say the biggest contributing factor was that we all had project experience before we started. So, and had taken leadership roles in that project experience. So we had actually seen all phases of projects, had some interaction with clients. I mean, the whole marketing side, you know, it's very different when you're at a small firm, but you do know how it's going in other offices. So I think just seeing all the parts of the machine work, and then taking that knowledge and kind of making it our own, that was the secret sauce. And I mean, the partnership, the personalities that we have, I think we're each very different from one another, and so I think that's also helpful. You know, we can really address different kinds of clients in different ways. And you know, as this is not your primary question, but I think a part of the success that we've had is that we don't partition our project work into financial pots. So if I bring in a project, but Tony or Eric is the right one to do it, that's how it goes. So we keep everything as a single, you know, revenue stream. So I think we've avoided a lot of sort of infighting or maybe competition that we might otherwise have had over bringing work in potentially. We work as a team, essentially.
You mentioned that 10 of you try to collaborate on every project, and they're tracing this all on the table. That's a pretty nice design process. Can you elaborate or explain more how that works? Is that really happening on each project, and does that only happen in the beginning? And how does that carry through? Is like a team member, is it really 10 people, or is it just 3 people that take on those ideas and can you elaborate that?
Yeah, so I think it's different for every project, and you know, sort of the length of a design process has something to do with that too. The sketches on the table was for our Love Bank Park project, which was a pro bono project, so we really turned it into something like we decided as an office, we're committing to this project, we're all in. So it was a fun way for everybody to get involved, and we really came up with some fun ideas as a result of kind of having pizza and sketching, a couple times, and then somebody runs off and builds models. And but we can't do that on every project, but we do make internal communication about the projects an important part of the process. So I would say it probably happens more often at the beginning, parts of it where people are kind of thinking through like, hey, let's just put this on the wall. We added pin-up space all over. I'm sure many of you have the same, but people will pin things up on the wall, and then you can kind of get a better sense of what's going on in the office. Just rough process work. Sometimes it's very curated if we have something going on in the office where we want it to look nice, but I personally prefer it when it's messy, and there's just kind of a lot of things that aren't quite finished, but just ideas that maybe come out. So I would say like sharing the work is important, talking about the work, continuing to kind of refine the message around every project, all of that's important. And I would say at the back end of that, the design awards process is almost like reopening the charrette again, because you have time to make drawings of the drawings that you submitted as the final construction drawings, but maybe didn't have time to make through construction administration, and it's been sitting there, and then award season comes around, and it's like, okay, I've been meaning to make that diagram, which will tell the story better. And that ends up being its own charrette, and usually that's a couple people working on each submission, just to kind of think through how we tell the story of the project. That's actually a really important part of our process, is kind of the looking back and kind of making sense of what we've done. Mm-hmm.
Why does design matter to you?
Well, actually, you know what, I left it. So I think buildings matter, and that is why design matters. Where we do the things that we do all day long, people are finally starting to research that, but when you look at like the statistics, where 85% or more of our building stock is built without the involvement of an architect, except to put a stamp on a paper. That means that people who are not trained in design are doing 85% of our design work. So when you think about how it's like almost a rare beast now to have a project that's designed, and what you get with a design project is a place that's tailored to individual needs, to people, rather than tailored to a budget or a pro forma. And I think design matters because you can make a place that has lasting impact on people's lives. And it's, now there is scientific research backing, obviously, like how the classroom experience can, vary from one end of the spectrum to the other based on the noise that's in the classroom, or the chaos of the classroom, or the order of the classroom, or the color of the classroom, or the lights of the classroom. And somebody thinking about these things, that's, in one example, the future of our children, right? So that's why design matters, because buildings matter. Mm-hmm. Oh, one more.
I'm curious, because of the nature of like the historical and modern work you do you find preferred contractors that you go with?
It's a great question.
Issue, because in that CA side of what you're doing, there's so much investigative work and historical work. You're interfacing with new additions and things like that. How do you execute that? Trying to find the right craftsmen, the right folks that can actually perform and execute some of those details. Do you take those folks with you in projects, or how does that work? That's a really challenging piece in some of this style of work.
It is. The answer is yes. If we can control the short list of contractors, we absolutely do. Sometimes you can't, if it's a public, this is off. That's okay. Oh, there you go. I can yell. If it's a public project, it has to go out to public bid. And if the person's qualified on paper, then they get the project. But anytime that we can, first of all, prearrange meetings with the owner and describe to them why it matters to have a contracting partner along during the design process, that's our favorite thing to do. Because then we're all making decisions together, expectations are set together, budgets are set together. If we can't do that, we at least hope that we can, cultivate the short list. But yes, contracting is absolutely key. It's as important as what we do. And finding people who are craftspeople for the specialty work who only do, this type of historic work is, absolutely rare and critical. And we find in the St. Louis market, there's a few contractors who do it really well, and there's a lot of contractors who will say, oh yeah, I can do that. And then you discover that they have never done it before, and actually they don't understand what they're dealing with. It's not their fault, they just haven't done it, before or understand the subtleties of it. So we do our best in those situations to really take advantage of our spec sections that require pre-bid conferences and sit down and review the scope of work. As much as we can insert ourselves into that process, we will. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Anna. Really appreciated your presentation and lecture, and so glad to finally have you up here in Omaha. I've been following your firm's work for several years now, so you guys do really great work out of St. Louis. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is obviously our last lecture of 2025. We're hoping to have another great lineup next year for 2026. So I will be hitting up sponsors again, and please respond back to my emails. And hopefully have another really great lineup for next year. And so yeah, thank you everyone for coming out and supporting us. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.